everybody. Welcome to Sonic Talk, episode 507, recording today live on Wednesday, the, 27th of September. Gosh, autumn is upon us very swiftly. We're almost there. This is the podcast to do with music technology, all the things that kind of surround it, to do with music, software, controllers, synthesizers, drum machines, I've said controllers. I said controllers twice last week as well. So please stay tuned if that's what you're interested in, and feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Then you'll get notified every time we go live. This will also be available if you've only come in halfway through, although I guess this is the beginning, for full upload a bit later on after the show. I just need to sort out the edit and what have you. But welcome everybody. I also want to say welcome to YouTube chat room, which you can see there. You can usually find us via, if you subscribe to the channel, you'll be let know. Nice to see you, you all there. Welcome, one and all, and also our dedicated IRC chat room, which you can find at sonicstate.com/live. That's the way to do it. I'm going to remember to plug this at the beginning as well. I should also say, if you want any Sonic State merch, we've got some merch on the go. This is the delicious mug that tea just somehow tastes better through. There are lots of other little designs and colours and variants, T-shirts, hoodies, that sort of stuff. If you just head over to sonicstate.com, there's a link there to the store, and you can avail yourself of any of that stuff. Also want to say thank you very much to Isotope for providing the RX6 prize for this week's competition. More on that later. Obviously, that is the kind of de facto standard for audio processing and fixing. If you've got any problems at all, background noise, hiss, distortion, all sorts of stuff, it'll fix any of that stuff. So I want to say thanks to them once again. So let's get on to our panellists. We'll start with Mr. Dave Spears, who's over there in his home setup, which has changed slightly. I think he's in Studio B, or would you call this Studio A or Studio B, Dave?
Probably Studio B now. Well, no, Studio A at the minute.
Okay, it's the one that's working, right?
Yes, everything's working.
And of course, Dave Spears, GeForce Software. You actually just released the Chambertron. Was it yesterday or this morning? I think, wasn't it? Which is a new rack extension from you guys, right?
Yep, yesterday.
And how's that going?
Yeah,
exciting. I'll just give you a quick taste of it. It's got your voice all over it as well. These are various tapes from the original Chamberlain, which was kind of precursor to the Mellotron. 35 Chamberlain tape banks. Available Reason rack extension, which might link into a project a little bit later on.
The Chambertron Re.
There he goes. We can hear your voice for real. But yeah, exciting. So I guess that's what you've been working on for a while, right?
Yeah. Because we did Retron, and before we put out Restrings, people were asking for some of the Chamberlain sounds, and then Streetly Electronics, who were the original Mellotron makers back in the 60s, came to us with their Chamberlain tapes, and we kind of went, ooh, because people have been asking for an expansion pack, but there's something in the way that the rack extension kind of patch hierarchy works, that it made it difficult for us to put things in Retron because it would probably screw up the user's songs. So we kind of went, you know what, let's just do like a trilogy of rack extensions. And this one, I think it sounds amazing. And that little video clip was like a little bit of a homage, a very sad homage to Fallout, which any games nerd will know.
Right. Okay.
No one plays Fallout here.
I don't know that. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not a Fallouter. Anyway, Dave, it's a pleasure to have you as ever. And also we have Mr. Ben Wilson, aka DivKid, who is back with us. He's taken some time out to celebrate the birth of his child. Congratulations, Ben. You're not looking tired or anything.
Yeah, thank you. Div Dad, I guess.
Oh yes, but well.
Yeah. Div baby, div dad, div mum. Yes, we've had all that. Yeah, it's all going well.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to hear it. I suppose there's no... Sorry. Oh, that's Gaz as well.
Is that a Fisher Price? Although
Gaz's video's frozen, but never mind.
Is that a Fisher Price activity centre, young man?
I'm going to get them... just as Gaz mentioning Fisher Price. I mean, sonically it's not, but there is a joke between a few modular friends that the Bug brand things look a little bit Fisher Price. I'll get us started on this PT delay, and then we'll work up to some other stuff.
Excellent. Pleased to have you around, Ben. I suppose as much asking you what you've been up to, because it's going to be pretty self-evident from the fact that we know what you've been up to, and that's going to be pretty much what it comes down to. And of course, Gaz Williams as well, who is frozen, but we can still hear him. I don't know. That's a good question. I couldn't answer that question. How are you, Gaz? Gaz Williams, professional bass player and music technologist and portrait artist by the looks of things at the moment. But we'll work on that.
I'll try and talk like this to make it look like my video is stuck.
Why is that stuck? That's annoying.
I don't know. Yeah.
I'm really not like that in real life, I can guarantee.
No, he's usually much more animated.
What should I do? Should I try calling back in?
Yeah, well, maybe finish your introduction first, and then we'll get you back.
Okay.
How are you, Gaz? Apart from feeling a bit static at the moment.
I'm good. We've just filmed our new machine review, haven't we, Nick?
Yeah, Machine Mark III.
Enjoyed that. I think it's very cool. I like it a lot. So I guess that will be coming soonish.
Yes, it will be. Right, let's move on. While Gaz sorts himself out and comes back, we'll perhaps get on to our first topic, and I can play a bit of introduction video because that's what I like to do from time to time.
As musicians, we don't ask for much. I mean, when it all comes down to it, all we really need is, well, more everything. Evolving pads, 808 basses, plucks, leads, rhythmic sequences. No, more. Monophonic unison supersaw wavetable harmonics with custom envelope modulation routings. More. Pianos that bring tears, pianos that raise fists, pianos that don't sound like pianos at all. More. Drums that are dirty, tight, beefy, punchy tuned, lo-fi and downsampled for big drops and tape stops. More.
Well, that rather long-winded introduction is basically the news that Reason 10 has been announced. It's going to be out on, I think, October 25th. You can pre-order it now. Or if you buy Reason now, you get a free upgrade. So you won't be left out if that's the case. Reason 10, obviously, kind of linked up, I guess, with Dave G4 Software's release of the Chambertron. But it seems like it's kind of a big content update. It doesn't seem like they're not listing any new features necessarily, but they are listing that there's a whole bunch of new instruments. There's Grain and Europa synths. In fact, if I go to the web page here, we should be able to see what there is. So we got that synth there, that's Europa, which is a very what does that look like? It looks like, I'm trying to think of the modular manufacturer, Ben. You probably know who that looks a bit like. The red with the red knobs. I've forgotten what it is. Red knobs and faders. There's also grain sample manipulator, new sampled instruments, and a couple of included rack extensions. So lots there for you if you're already a Reason fan. Lots of extra content, and that's the sort of seems to be the kind of main focus of this. I'll start with you, Dave, because I mean I guess you're working sort of in the propeller sphere. I know not many of us, or I certainly don't use Reason, so I can't really comment on what it needs and what it has to have. But a lot more content seems to be the way things are going right now, right?
Yep. Get people hooked with more content, more stuff. Actually, the synths look quite interesting. I haven't had the opportunity to try them out yet. And even if I had, I probably couldn't talk about it. Oh, I suppose I could, but I haven't. But I do quite like the look of that Europa. And actually,
that's Verbos. Thank you very much in the chat room. Mugshu in the chat room calls it Verbos. Yeah, it looks a little bit Verbosy like. If I can make that, yeah. So it's got that kind of look to it. So I don't know. I mean, other than the fact that we're actually announcing it, I guess it's going to be hard for us to kind of. I don't know, Ben. Are you a Reason user, or have you been a Reason user? I mean, some of us have used it in the past, but not. I certainly don't find it as part of my current setup.
Yeah, I haven't had it for quite a while. I started out on Reason, and first kind of experience, although I didn't know it at the time, modular-ish experience, I guess. Plugging in the CV stuff around the back, flipping the rack around. It definitely helped me learn how to kind of use a rack and a patch-based system in a studio. When I had used Reason 2 or 2.5, I think I came in until around version 4 or 5, possibly 6. Then I haven't seen it since. I think this looks great though. The grains on the granular synth, having all the overlap and the grain envelope controls, looks really powerful. I do like the kind of red Buchla, I think they're Rogan knobs, those. If anyone wants to repurpose a synth with those red knobs, they're Rogans, I think. Verbos style looking synth. Yeah, I've not used it for quite a while, but I'm certainly keen to try it out. I think it would suit me with a kind of modular mentality, being able to patch things around the back.
Yeah, it definitely has a kind of an aesthetic that appeals. You know, you tend to find, as with most DAWs, you tend to find people who are into it, are really into it, and are very evangelical about it. I know Gaz is. I mean, more content. I don't know if you're not a Reason user, are you?
I just would prefer it to go less kind of presets, you know, spend more time on your own creativity rather than more. I think we've got too much stuff as it goes anyway. So I'm not sure that more is such a great selling. Well, it certainly doesn't work for me. I kind of get overwhelmed by feeling guilty with all this software, with all this more. I've got more stuff to, you know, more reasons not to do anything, you know. That's why it feels like a little bit. So I don't know, I mean, but to be fair the new plugins do actually look really good. I don't know, I'm just a bit down on the whole kind of, you know,
more stuff,
bloated massive thing, you know. I mean, that's just me though. I'm kind of going to smaller, simpler kind of things for creativity purposes, really. But yeah, as I say though, I mean, they do look really good, and the grain thing, I mean, it reminded me a little bit of Form, Native Instruments, which is really good fun. So if it's got a similar workflow to that, I think that looks like a really worthy addition. But yeah, less.
Well, I think it's gonna be about $129 or 129 euros or dollars to upgrade on the 25th. I think there's a beta. Did I read that right? Was there a beat? No, maybe I didn't read that right. Let's have a look. New sampled. I'm just scrolling down to have a look at that. Can I beta test? Maybe. You can sign up. Yeah, so there is the potential for a beta if you fancy a bit of that. But yeah, that's kind of one of the, I don't know how many, what is it, Big 5, Big 6? I mean, it's an ever-expanding sort of collection of DAWs that are seen as kind of the main players. So it's good to see at least one of them is getting a major upgrade like that. So anyway, as I said, good news. And if you want to check it out, go to propellerheads.se. Okay, and of course, at the other end of the scale, we've got Samplebot from A Tasty Pixel, which Samplebot is, well, A Tasty Pixel, I should say. They're the guys that brought you Loopy and Audio Bus, are very smart programmers. So the idea behind this is, I won't play the whole thing, is just literally you sample into a pad, you get to mess around with it, but it's also got lots and lots of very deep MIDI integration, so you can control it from external things like Loopy did. Loopy was one of the first applications, apart from maybe Thumb Jam, to really deeply integrate MIDI control and all the sort of Audio Bus stuff. I'll go to you, Gaz, because I know you're a fan of the old iOS. I will go to Gaz, because that's Gaz. iOS side of things. Is this exciting your boat? Floating your excitement?
It's frustrating me a little bit, actually, because Michael Tyson, the developer, has been developing this like Loopy Masterpiece Edition, which seems to have gone all quiet. I mean, I'd have thought it should be out by now. So I think he's been sidetracked. I think he has actually, like Ben, become a father. So that maybe gives him a little bit of an excuse. But I'm a bit annoyed with him because I want to see Loopy Masterpiece Edition. I love Loopy. This, however, is pretty cool. I mean, this is simple. I mean, it's very simple, and in its simplicity is both a good thing and maybe a limiting thing. It reminds me a little bit of Acid, where you've got Acid has a sample on a track, and then anytime you want, you can just sort of like draw within that track, and it'll draw the sample as many times as you want, as opposed to different things living on the same track. So that's quite, you know, it's got a very simple, and it's very colorful and beautifully animated and smooth, and, you know, it's really kind of well programmed for sure. Does it me this time? Not particularly, because actually a lot of my iOS time I'm just immersed with getting my head around Beatmaker 3, which is you know, which is like the opposite end of the spectrum from Samplebot. But you know, fair dues though. I mean, it is a lovely and simple to use piece of software, one which I'd imagine would be really cool if you're working in music education and want to get people
Yeah, that's true.
Interested in stuff, you know, because it's so colourful and easy to use, and people will just understand it like that, which that's a cool thing.
Yeah, well, actually, Michael Tyson, the developer, who is not only the developer, but he's a kind of auteur of iOS apps. As a lot of people who develop iOS apps, they kind of do everything from the GUI to the whole kind of kit and caboodle. So he's kind of in charge of everything, and he's found a sort of direct line to, I forgot the name of the guy now, who's the big USB TV celebrity who keeps who's using sorry, Fallon. Jimmy Fallon, and he's been sort of plugging it, so I'm sure it must result in a few sales. And nice work. I know, Ben, I know you use iOS stuff yourself. I mean, this could be kind of fun. I mean, he said that he used it. He was inspired by using it for his kid to enjoy. So maybe there's an element of that, but could be useful. You're muted, I think.
There we go.
There we go. That's a drink for somebody.
I was typing away in the chat room. Yeah, it looks a little bit simple on the front for me, but I am teaching. That's the kind of day job, and it'd be perfect for that. We're just looking at trying to get the kind of production side of a college course up, and some of that is very basic. You know, people coming in at 16 that they've just all of a sudden realised they want to play music. They don't play a traditional instrument, and we're trying to give them an avenue. And I think we'll try this out, actually. I'll maybe report back on this one. I'll try it out this week and see how it goes. I didn't see much about the editing. That was the only thing I wanted to see more of in that introduction video.
It's pretty limited. You can trim your samples and you can adjust the volume and pan, but there's not a lot else.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's kind of all we need to get, you know, people making beats quite quickly. There's a lot to be said, I think, much like last time I was on with Ty, that Digitech pedal, the Jam pedal. I don't think I'd use it personally ever, as Ty said, but amazing for a lot of people. I think this would work.
Yeah, it could well do. A simple audio interface. I know, Dave, I don't know whether you use any kind of mobile apps for actual music creation on your iPhone or iPad or anything, or, you know, why would you when you've got all of that stuff to play with? I mean, I suppose.
I do buy things.
I never really recognise that pattern.
I never seem to kind of get into them. And plus, I don't know what's going on with my phone, but I seem to lose apps. I'm wondering whether sometimes when I put it in my pocket, you know, like it's held, and then I might accidentally press. I went to find a calculator today on my phone. It was like the calculator's not there. So you do search, and then you have to download it again. So I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. My phone's misbehaving.
Pocket triggers.
As for this, yeah, maybe. I mean, this sounded kind of tight. You know, it all sounded tight. I quite like the way, you know, people like Dr. Luke and your hero, Mr. Martin, work. They don't really use MIDI and stuff at all, do they? They just use audio, and it's like punched to the grid. And what was it? $299?
Yeah,
just kind of worth. Might be worth a laugh, worth a punt. Yeah. But yeah, it's weird. I don't know. I've bought kind of everything from, remember that little, it was kind of like a theremin thing called, was it Bebot or something like that?
Oh yeah, that was one of the first, wasn't it? That was a Jordan Rudesh app, yeah.
Yeah, and the Moog thing, and but I've never really ended up kind of getting obsessed by them in the same way that I get obsessed by other software synths or real synths. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's context, I think, for a lot of people as well. Well, anyway, you can check it out. atastypixel.com will lead you there. Like you say, it came out September 20th. And once again, it's another one of those sort of great apps from our friend over at, Michael Tyson is his name, in fact, who, when I remember I was talking, because we were talking about apps sometime in the distant past, and he seemed to be living the life. He was just in an RV driving around Europe with a programming stuff on the table in the back of the van, you know, and it, you know, and generating income and just sort of living the life. It just sounded like a real kind of one of those sort of dream gigs. It made me feel really jealous. Gaz,
yeah, there is something worth mentioning with him though, is that he has created that like underlying audio engine, hasn't he? I think, what's it called, the Fantastic Audio Engine, or it's got some name like that. Which I think other people maybe have used in their app. So he's a very clever guy. So I think maybe this app is going to be quite robust in that respect. I haven't really tried it enough to be able to judge that. I have with Loopy a lot. I've used it in an enormous amount. So based on my experience with that, I think that side of it, you know, that it being a reliable and again, I haven't tried it with MIDI yet, so apologies for that. But I'd imagine because he builds audio engines, that underlying thing will be really, really strong with it.
Yeah, I think that's probably very true. Anyway, let's see what else we got. Oh yeah, well, we got to get this. Who needs massive Koto drum door slam jump cut effects? Because here we go.
All of us.
This is the new Spitfire Audio Zimmer effect. Zimmer, a percussion library. And if you're listening to this on big speakers, you will appreciate that there is an enormous amount of bottom end. They produced these at, I think it was Air, with orchestral players. I'll play the whole thing just so we can have our fill. Very nice. There we go. So that's the new Spitfire Audio Hans Zimmer percussion library, which I've got the page up here, actually. In fact, I was looking on it, and I think First Wave, Ty Unwin did one of the demos as well, which I wonder what that sounds like. This, yeah. There we go. All of that kind of big kind of which is what a lot of editors want and require in films, and it adds all that kind of like percussive accenting, and it's sort of a cliche, but I mean, he kind of invented it, didn't he? So if you're getting it from him, then that's got to be the right thing, right, Dave?
It was a time for heroes.
Boom.
It was a time for big drums. Everyone must have big drums. Yeah, no, my first thought was Paul Clarvis, who is a very good friend of Mr. Rick Smith's and who contributes to Underworld stuff, who's an amazing percussion player. And my second thought was, I bet Ty's got this, because I seem to remember hearing, you know, lots of this stuff. Well, you hear it everywhere, don't you? And I do. I was kind of lying in bed late one night, and that Ty's 1066 thing came on, which I thought was brilliant. But there was a lot of boom, 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 boom. It was a time for the Norman conquest and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, essential if you're doing this kind of work. I've got, in fact, Hans did some stuff when Eric did the Bob Moog Foundation library for Spectrasonics. And there's a load of stuff in there from Hans, which I've used on and off. It doesn't really work in kind of techno or light orchestral stuff. Though.
Yeah, it's too big.
I guess the thing is for techno.
Yeah. Some sort of little wheedly synth line with a just doesn't quite work. I don't know, but it definitely has its place. I mean, you know, and I think
the miking
a lot of it,
stuff.
Yeah, I mean, all of the ability.
It was brilliant. I mean, I kind of take the mickey a little bit, but it was brilliant. I mean, when you got that close miking, and then you can play at the scale, and obviously in looking at the contact player, you know, you've got the shading for the keys, which give you the different zones. So yeah, I think it's a kind of essential. It is an essential purchase for anybody who's doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think, what did I say? It's about 20 gigs of disk space required. If I go to there, free contact player, so it works with the regular contact. I think it's about, I had it written down, 259 at the moment. I don't know, Gaz, you know, I'm guessing, you know, you're not doing that kind of orchestral cinematic stuff, so it probably doesn't quite have a purpose in your arsenal.
It's a beautiful piece of software, incredibly made, looks great to use, but I'm really not interested in it. And I suspect that Hans Zimmer isn't interested in it either particularly. I reckon he's finished with that now. So that's his way of signing off that, right, I'm moving into pastures new. There you go. And like everyone else can, you know, do it to death. I'm bored of it, actually. That stuff is just, so yeah, no. Yeah, it's great. It is great. I can't knock the thing itself. They've done a beautiful job, but yeah, maybe it'll see the end, you know, things like this conspire to see them off, you know, to sort of people kind of get a bit bored of it all, you know. God, I'm in a grumpy mood today.
Well, okay.
Yeah, you fell right out the grumpy tree this morning.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Spitfire make, you know, very high quality sort of bespoke and characterful libraries that seem to fit, you know, the mold for people who are kind of working in the composition sphere. And so, you know, those sort of things are actually quite hard to find unless you've got them, you know, unless you've recorded them yourself. I know, Ben, is this, I mean, you know, you presumably have done some composition for media, that sort of thing. I mean, it's a language and it's a vocabulary that people expect if you're working with a director, and it might well cover some of their embarrassment for a crap edit when you can make the edit work better by making it more dramatic somehow, you know.
I mean, I missed a lot of that. You turned into a buffering robot, my end, but
I'm sorry.
Yeah, very much mirror a little bit of what Dave and Gaz said. I think he's potentially signing off on some of this stuff, and I'm fairly sure he won't. Now Hans Zimmer's got the Blade Runner soundtrack I saw as well, which is a shame. I'd kind of like to hear what someone else would do with that. I saw that he'd taken over for that one. I mean, it's great if you're doing that kind of work, and I think you know, A&R guys are going to request this stuff for some time from people doing TV, library music, and things. It's not much money for what you're getting.
No,
but
I suppose
for me,
not.
I quite like repurposing odd bits of sound. I'd quite like to throw it in a little one-shot sampler and just use it for some of its low end, but you know, throw it through other filters and play around. Sample fodder is kind of what I'd call that stuff, but I kind of throw anything in the sample fodder folder to try out. So no, not really for me, but a great tool. And the Spitfire stuff, I mean, the first one of theirs I heard was the brass in the old World War II shelter, and the spaces that they record in and the control over the space on their products is phenomenal.
Yeah, they definitely. I mean, they've really created an art for it. You know, they've sort of, because they're relatively new, really. I mean, I know they've been going a while now, but they came very much to the forefront with these sort of very specific, bespoke. You know, there's the Bernard Herrmann strings as well, and there's all these things that they just do which fit a very specific creative niche and add those sort of voices. And I guess if you're working on a project where, you know, you might be getting paid to do that, then, you know, the cost of one of those libraries just to kind of voice it authentically is negligible for that kind of thing. And I think that's where they're obviously scoring big on that. So yeah, it's available. I think it's available now. I think, what did I say? I did say it's about 39 gigs uncompressed. No, it's 20 gigs space required. Contact version 5.6.8 or higher, or Contact 8.6 or higher. So you don't need a full version of Contact, though I suspect you might get a bit more out of it if that's the case. Okay, I think it's probably time to take a word from our sponsors. Obviously, Isotope RX6 are sponsoring the competition, and we very much appreciate it. And the RX6 really is the kind of suite of tools to go to if you need to restore or fix any problems with audio. We've got denoising, declicking, dehumming, depopping. The spectral repair stuff is really astonishing, and it's saved our bacon loads of times. And quite often we might have the fan noise of somebody demonstrating in the studio, and I just process it in real time with dialogue denoise, and it just gets it all away. Vocal cleaning tools, particularly useful for today's pop production. Deplosive, breath control, those kind of things save hours in the edit. You can get hold of this and download a fully functional demo if you go to isotope.com/RX6, and you can get the whole thing. Yeah, got batch processing, multi-channel, I think up to 16 tracks at the same time. So if there's a drum track, somebody drops something in the room or whatever, you can remove everything from current mics. It really is a very powerful audio repair system. Well worth checking out if you work with audio at all and ever come up with those sort of problems. And of course, we have the competition. Last week we asked for the hashtag MixerFixer and RX6, and we have a winner. The winner this week is Twitter user _A peak A_. A peaker. I think they said, and they surely would find this to be a really nifty package to add to my iZotope Inc. mastering tools. And yes, indeed, you are right. You have in fact won this week's competition. All you've got to do is get in touch. If you check the about form on Sonicstate, you could just send us a message and we'll get you hooked up as soon as possible. And of course, we've got another opportunity to win this week. You can win RX6 once again. We're looking for the hashtag audio tools. That's one word, the hashtag audio tools and the hashtag RX6 at Sonicstate and at iZotope Inc. And you need Twitter, but all you got to do is tweet those and add any other comments or stick a picture in there. Sam, we do watch it, and I know that iZotope do monitor all their hashtags, and they quite often have these big screens up in their dining area where all of this stuff goes by. So you may well be exposed to the entire iZotope community if you would enter the competition as well. So yeah, once again, the audio tools hashtag one word and RX6 one word at Sonicstate and at iZotope Inc. That'll get you where you need to go. Right, what's next? Oh, yeah, this was really interesting. I'd never heard of this before. This is something called the Voder, which is not something I've ever heard of. Apparently the world's first synthesizer. 1939, it was a guy called Homer Dudley working at Bell Telephone Laboratories who created a kind of like a tool for creating real-time speaking, and it was operated by somebody who had a particular keyboard. I'll see if I could just
little expression.
Let me. Oops.
Now will you have him repeat that in a high voice? And now in his best bass.
And it's astonishing when you think this is 1939.
Sure whether it's going to be a tenor or a bass, and the Voder being
So, I mean, the idea is, I think there's a shot of what you have to do here. So you have a keyboard which has different pitches and different plosives and different vocal sounds. And I've just thought, in some ways, we talked about the Vocaloid thing last week. I mean, it's not a million miles away from this, but it was done in 1939 and played almost like by a stenographer in many ways. And I'd never heard of this, but there's often the claim of the first synthesizer. I don't know. Dave, have you heard of this?
No, I hadn't until you sent it through. I want it just to annoy the missus, really.
She's not fond of vocoders, is she, or anything vocal?
No, they're like clowns for her. She's kind of like, oh no, not another vocoder. In fact, there's one here that I've been mucking around with, and she's just been like, can I break it? Yeah, interesting, really interesting looking thing. Kind of remarkable, really, because actually, when you listen to it, the sound of a vocoder hasn't really changed, has it?
No, and that's not actually a vocoder. It's actually formant filters in real time by this kind of ancient, what's that? 60, nearly 80 years old technology.
Yeah, but that's amazing, absolutely amazing. And it looks like one hell of a controller. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could get hold of that and then kind of put a couple of MIDI outs and CV outs and stuff like that and sit there like a stenographer kind of doing all this weird stuff. It'd be really cool. Next to an EMI desk, like an old EMI desk.
Yeah, no, it's got definitely a certain something about it. I know, Gaz, it's the sort of thing that, it would be lovely to just have one, wouldn't it? As a sort of object of rarity in a centerpiece to your bathroom or something, Well, perhaps not the bathroom, although electricity might be a bit dangerous, obviously. Oh. Say again?
Oh, time.
I missed that. Oh, I think we're having a bandwidth issue.
Am I back?
Yep, you're back. Sorry, Gaz.
Okay. Oh, don't know what's going on there. This video's only had about 9,000 views, and it's one of the best things I've seen in years. It's absolutely amazing. The thing that really got me is that they ask the operator, and it's always women, isn't it, that they ask to operate them. So I don't quite know why that is, but it took that particular operator a year to get as good as she did, and I think she's doing it all in real time, like performing it. So she's shaping all of the vowels and everything by playing the keys. As she's asking questions,
yeah,
as she's asking questions, she's answering it, she's performing, and she's using a foot pedal to vary the pitch. And it kind of struck me then that sort of people's own accents are going to kind of affect the way they play it. They're going to kind of maybe emphasize different pitches and whatnot. But it goes on in the video.
Oh, I'm going to jump to Ben here because we're breaking up a little bit there. It's interesting, isn't it, that she had it speaking French as well a bit earlier on in the show, which was kind of funky.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. There's this sort of fascination with this kind of thing, isn't it? This notion of vocal. But I mean, first synthesizer, lots of people claim to that. It's like the last Cornish-speaking person. You know, there's these various claims. I wonder if it is. I think 1930. I think when was the Nova Chord? That was 1940 something, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it claimed first vocoder, someone said, but as you said, it's not a vocoder per se from human voice against the synth. Looking at the kind of circuit diagram that comes up, as Dave said, it's amazing that this was 1939. The sound's not changed that much. The method of some synthesized waveform, and I think they call it hiss on the diagram, effectively, and formant filtering. Amazing. It's barely changed. My friend Matthew pointed out the dope for vocoder, which I think's discontinued and has been a while, sounds very close to this. Anyone's want to, again, it's another thing you're probably not going to get your hands on, but a lot more recent. Amazing, and the articulation in French as well. And as Gaz said, accents coming through. Made me a little sad actually, in that she'd spent over a year learning how to do that. And so many of us are guilty in the electronic world of not actually putting time in to learn an instrument, kind of forgetting that that's what this stuff is, potentially, if it's used that way. Amazing to spend a year on that and be able to articulate that way. Totally blown away.
I'm just trying to see if there's a credit for the lady who played it. I did read somewhere that she trained up 20 operators. I can't imagine why you would use that particularly, but I mean, it was debuted at the 1939 New York World's Fair. So you know, that's that, and there is reference to this, and I guess that must have been like an old-fashioned kind of recording straight to disc, to vinyl disc of the presentation. I mean, it sounded very scripted and what have you, but yeah, great thing. I mean, I just love the idea that this thing exists. I wonder if there are actually any in the world, because I mean, I don't know how many they would have made. I can't see. Dave, that's got to be something. Yeah, it's got to be something for your collection. I mean, or maybe the diagram allows, you know, it to be rebuilt somehow. You know.
Yeah, I mean, they're basically resonators. I mean, the whole vocoding thing started, wasn't it, to save bandwidth on telephone lines? I think that's kind of how it was developed originally. I was just disappointed she wasn't wearing a white coat. Did you remember that in school, you know, when you had the VHS recorder? Like, you know, at the end of term, they'd bring in some TV, and it was always a bloke in a white coat, wasn't it?
Who'd set it up, the school technician.
The VHS recorder, yeah. Which I always thought was quite sinister. So yeah, that was my only disappointment with this video, is she wasn't wearing a white lab coat.
Never mind, but well worth checking out, I would say. But if you get an opportunity, right? I'm just going to. I wonder if I can play this without actually incurring any kind of copyright. Let's see. This is a very brief excerpt of Björk's new track, which is The Gate, off the new album Utopia, and it's a thing of absolute beauty and seems to be kind of quite universally critically acclaimed, although I have to say it's very out there. The video is awesome, and she's been working with a guy called Arca, who is a Venezuelan producer she worked on the last album with, and it's really very non-standard. But I won't play it all because we'll probably end up getting busted by it. But new album from Björk. I mean, as we know, Björk's been with us. I don't know how many albums she's made, but, you know, I don't know about you, but throughout my musical journey through life, her tracks from her have been present all the way along. So it's nice to hear another one, even if this one sort of is not as immediately accessible. Proper art, though, don't you think, Gaz? Muted? Okay. Proper art then, Dave, don't you think?
Yeah. It is. It is. She's amazing. She's amazing. I've had the sort of privilege of meeting her, as I know your Andy has. And she's just like one of those people that you just don't say anything around because you're just trying to soak up what they're talking about. And I love that. There's a fantastic video where she talks about, it's really early on, where she talks about television. I'd recommend everybody go and watch that if they haven't seen it already. She's saying it's like the antithesis of art and whatnot. It's just, yeah, I love her. I think she's very special and yeah, amazing. In fact, I was kind of a fan from day one. You remember the Sugar Cubes?
Yeah, I mean, her vocal style was astonishing.
I did an interview, or I did some text for an online thing, and they were talking about in the 80s, a company had come out with a sub bass, and now they're making sensors for self-driving cars, and how it was quite an amazing thing to release a sub bass in the 80s and actually everything in the 80s was all about the snare, which immediately reminded me of that Sugar Cubes thing, which came out in the 80s, that first album, which was Blue Eyed Pop, wasn't it? This is Blue Eyed Pop, 1,000-pound snare drum sound. And for me, that just summed up, just that one little phrase summed up all of the 80s.
Yeah, she's definitely got on the mark. And of course, all the kind of early collaboration. Was it? Did she work with Johnny Dollar and all those kind of guys back in the 90s as well? I'm pretty sure she sort of tended to kind of always gravitate towards the sort of slightly left of centre, kind of more out there producers. And this guy Arca I was watching some of his solo material, and it's equally kind of non-standard and really kind of quite challenging. It's great stuff, but and it's just brilliant that these two people have kind of been able to collaborate like that. I know, Ben, is Björk, I know you're a bit younger than us. I don't know if Björk has figured in your musical journey through life.
Yeah, I was really fortunate to have some amazing music teachers that around 13, 14 were playing me Aphex Twin and Square Pusher. To the point I remember for my school music exams, he played bass and I played drums, and we tried to recreate Come to Daddy. So it was pretty kind of full on from entering teenage years in terms of musical education. Yeah, amazing. I absolutely love this. Really great art piece. The way that she kind of, the kind of portamento, the kind of slewing in her voice between notes, it almost sounds like when I first started editing vocals in Melodyne, it kind of steps to the next note, but strangely kind of bends to the next note as well. It's really kind of odd and robotic, and it seems to be a thing that kind of Icelandic, Nordic, Baltic singers have. Yeah, I love that. It's kind of a quirk of that female voice from that part of the world. Totally amazing. The articulation in the backing vocals as well. It's almost like, in terms of note choice and execution, almost like a string quartet at one point. It's fairly back in the mix, but amazing use of backing vocals. Yeah, just really blown away with it. The sense of space as well in this one. I was listening to the iMac and then again in the car on my phone earlier, and then I brought it up on the speakers before the show. It's kind of wet and big sonically without being drowned and mushy, which is a real hard thing to balance. It's so well produced. Yeah,
Wet and Big's a contender for the show title there, Ben. I'm afraid that's a cracking phrase to anybody who. I don't know if Gaz is back with us audio wise. No, he seems to have lost his audio. That's a bit of a weird one. You might need to reboot your browser there. Sorry about that, Gaz. I'm sure you have something to say, but it might just be that we have to pass that one on. I'll tell you what. While Gaz sorts that out, I'll just plug our Wavejunction synth, of course, Max for Live synth that you can buy directly from us in conjunction with Metafunction. It's basically got 2 oscillators, multi-wave oscillators, 3 multi-mode filters with some really great sounding modes in there. I've also got wavetable on those oscillators as well. There are 5 envelopes, 5 LFOs, and a 12-slot modulation matrix as well. So there's plenty of stuff to play with. Does work in Ableton Live, Max for Live, and we're offering a 10% discount. If you head over to bit.ly/Wavejunction, you can get to our store page where you can order it. and just enter in the code WJTalk17. That's WJTalk17. All the sounds on this track, apart from the drums, are in fact made using Wavejunction. So just get your 10% discount, bit.ly/Wavejunction, use the code WJTalk17. So I don't know if Gaz is back with us now. If he speaks, we might hear him. Yeah, there we go. Look at that. Yes. Did you want to come in on Björk?
Yeah, I think everybody articulated very similar feelings I've got. She's amazing. I remember a few years ago when she did the Medulla album, which was made entirely out of her own voice. Everything that you heard was just her voice, and I think that was using Melodyne a lot, actually, for that particular album. But she's always someone who's embraced the latest things in technology, including, visually as much as audio, really, and apps and all sorts of things. So I think, wonderful. The world is most definitely a better place with Björk in it.
Absolutely. There was a great review on FactMag where the reviewer just gave a 10 out of 10 for kind of all the different aspects, 50 out of 10 just for being Björk, but because his editor meant that he could only score 10 out of 10, he had to just say, well, 10 out of 10 for the track. But it's really weird because it's bucking the trend. I mean, it's so different to anything else out there. It's very non-standard. I mean, it's quite hard to follow. There's almost no meter through it. It just kind of takes you kind of on a bit of a journey.
There's an amazing panning sort of synth sound, which correlates with what's going on visually, and I've listened to it in conjunction with the visuals as well, so not quite sure how some of those panning sounds, whether they'll be a bit incongruous without the visuals, but the sound, I'm not quite sure what the sound is. It's one of the best sounds I've heard in a long time. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, nice. Yeah, nice. Probably maybe it's using ancient Roland RSS technology. Who knows? It's entirely possible. Okay, what's next? That's the Björk. Oh yeah, did anyone see the evolution of dance music over the last 100 years? This is 1800 to well, more than 200 years actually. So we started, I think we can play it. We started off with traditional African music, then we go through various folks, blues, jazz, Dixieland, and then suddenly around and various gospel, old R&B, soul music coming through the 70s, and then suddenly synth pop in the early 70s, then coming back, and then just bang, this massive explosion of multiple genres, which I think correlates pretty much with the advent of MTV and that kind of global music network. But it's quite an interesting little infographic. This is over at thompson.co.uk. I don't know if that's the travel people, but it's a bizarre thing for them to have to transfer. Maybe it is. I'll just see. Let's see if I can get to the actual root of this. I wonder if it is. That would be very bizarre if it's the holidays. It is. Why is that on that's on the Thompson travel blog? I didn't even think. What a bizarre thing. That I don't know where that came from. I don't know. They're rebranding, aren't they? They're being called TUI to go with their logo. I've seen some advertising on this. It's bizarre, isn't it? Dave, got any thoughts on this? I mean, it's an interesting, that suddenly from kind of pretty much just basic Dixieland and swing, suddenly we go to kind of everything all at the same time.
Yeah, controversial view on all of the different genres of music and how they came to be, in that they all seem to coincide with different drugs.
Ah, that too.
And there is this argument that as certain drugs come on the market, then you see a whole new genre of music based on it. And when you think the ubiquity of kind of ecstasy around that period, and then all of a sudden you've just got this kind of tons and tons and tons of different genres. So yeah, slightly controversial there, but I've yet to see it disproved.
So okay. What genre is all the ketamine created then?
Oh, it's got to be shoegaze, hasn't it? Really?
Yeah. Ambient droning music, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Chill out, that sort of stuff. I know, Ben, is this it's just a little kind of quirky little thing. I must confess, I guess the Thompson link is probably to do with world travel. Am I guessing with that? That might be it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love it, even just that as an image, the final image. I'd love that, going on my package holiday kind of thing and flicking through on the plane. Yeah, great. It's nice to see some geographical things. Sometimes see these graphs of more focused, maybe like where punk came from, and it kind of works its way back across a graph. But yeah, I really liked it. It's nice to see that side, the geographical thing, which, as you say, is the Thompson link, however odd that is. Yeah, I'm glad they didn't go too into the kind of micro genre. I feel like you could pick some of those genres and do the same kind of size graphic. Certainly like, you know, all the micro house, tech house, techno house, it could go on forever. All the different subsets of kind of grime and garage meeting for dubstep as well. I'm sure I was looking at it because we have a similar picture up in one of the my kind of teaching spaces, and someone always picks something in it. You know, why isn't techno linked back to dubstep? Because that links back to dub, or someone always finds fault. But yeah, I liked it. It was great having the little video kind of slider to slide along as well.
It's bizarre, isn't it? Yeah. I can't imagine what it must be like having to research that and whether or not, you know, then somebody could check your work. Because, I mean, it's the sort of thing you'd have to be pretty mono-focused to be able to kind of pull off, I'd imagine. I don't know. Gaz, are you, what do you think? Are you MTV or drugs? That's another
MTV. Like, the MTV is another drug, isn't it, really?
Well, when it came out, it was very new. Yeah, I suppose.
No, but I mean, you know, it's quite addictive. It's kind of very colourful. People would, you know, just watch it for hours on end. So I suppose. I think looking at this thing, I thought it was a little bit frustrating purely from a European point of view. I felt that Europe wasn't properly in the earlier part represented in terms of, you know, I think like a lot of the dance music, although a big aspect of it came from Chicago and Detroit, but I think it tapped into something that was part of like kind of the British folk scene and rock music. You know, rock music's had an enormous effect on dance music.
Yeah, and, skiffle that came. You know, that was a big focus, wasn't it? No, yeah, I mean, so seriously.
No, it was. You're right. So I just felt that it was just. I didn't think it was really that interesting. I think it was all a little bit too simplistic. Nice to see Bristol though on there as sort of for our contribution there with trip hop. That every person who's had anything to do with that genre hates the term and denies any involvement with it. But,
well, I will just on a plus, new age, ambient, and industrial rock gets credited to Europe, so exclusively. And then what else do we get? We get. I'm just going to zip forward here. France, synth pop, yeah, I can get that. Daft Punk, I suppose, ambient, and then any other genres turning up. Oh no, it's just the hard house, prog house, industrial, EDM. Looks like Belgium, London, jungle, big letter, breakbeat, hardcore, just UK generally, indie dance, post punk, trip hop, yeah, in Bristol, new school breaks, UK garage, speed garage. God, there are so many subgenres, aren't there? Here, it's grime, dubstep. Yeah, I mean they are showing up, but you know if that's what you're interested in, then I suppose it's just a fun little infographic there anyway.
Yeah, it's fun.
I'll tell you.
What can you say?
Did I ever tell you about that thing? Did I ever tell you about that thing we used to do at NAMM when people would come by and kind of go, "Is this useful for?" And they name this really obscure genre, and we kind of go, "Yeah." Anyway, a few of us got together and decided that we'd invent a genre, and we go, "Yeah, it's good for garage and this, that, and the other," and crowd, and then eventually. You try and see it in print that whatever somebody was selling was great for crowd music. And at one point, we really did see that happen.
Oh, well done. It's nothing like a bit of subterfuge there and subversive media manipulation, sort of something that we've become much more familiar with in recent years, of course. Okay, right. Is it worth just a quick chat on the new Apple stuff? I mean, it came out a while back and I didn't really want to do anything about it. Obviously, we've got the new Apple Watch, which is now actually a phone, 400 quid. The £1,000 iPhone X, which $1,000 iPhone X. More importantly, though, iOS 11 seems more interesting. Gaz, you showed me some of the iOS 11 stuff, and it's really interesting the way that it's now, because we were worried that the desktop was starting to go more to mobile, but now it seems like that mobile is starting to move towards the similarities with desktop. I don't know whether that's by design or whether it's through, whether it's trying to kind of what agenda it's pushing. You've been using iOS 11, right?
Yeah, definitely. From the iPad perspective, is an enormous improvement in terms of what you would possibly want it to be, in terms of having some access to your files, rather than, you know, one of the most frustrating things throughout iOS's existence is the absolutely, oh God, don't get me started on this, just that horrible data sort of channel, and having to use stinking iTunes as a conduit for your data. Oh my goodness, oh God. What a clunky, awful design that is. And Apple are really, sometimes just want to slap them around their face. And while we're at this, you know, they're kind of wafting their blooming iPhone X around. I want the phone, as soon as it runs out of batteries, the moment I plug it back in, to come back online immediately. You know, you're on that important phone call and it goes off, you plug it in, you go, come back on, come back on, come back on. And it takes like forever to come back on. That's what people want. They don't want extra thinness or whatever other bloody bollocks they're sort of pushing. So yeah. Anyway, sorry, rant aside. Honestly, it's such a wind up that is. But coming back to the iOS 11 thing and iPad, the iOS 11 thing, you know, it is making the iPad a more serious tool in terms of, I think certainly for graphic designers and content creators or whatever, and the way that you can just, the multitasking is much more elegant now, and the way that you can just sort of drag two apps together and just sort of drag and drop between apps. You know, this is kind of like standard desktop computer or laptop computer abilities, but you know, together with the very fluid multi-touch kind of workflow that iOS is very good for, I think this does represent a very, definitely a positive evolution of the platform.
Yeah, I haven't tried it out yet, but I guess I'm going to at some point. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, although we've got a ton of iOS devices here, I mean, I just don't use them. And I think that's, again, I was going back to the kind of notion of context. I mean, we use our iPad all the time for our video switching system. That's fine. But all it's doing is an interface to some MIDI data. I mean, I'm just not using it elsewhere. And I think it's the... I think once you overcome that hurdle and you start using it seriously, and as we've seen, you know, in recent months and probably a year or so, there have been some really big leaps in terms of, certainly for musical ability, musical creativity, just very serious sounding instruments and kind of creative devices and creative environments, you know, DAWs and the like. All right, Ben, have you updated everything to your iOS 11, or are you not so bothered?
No. Not so bothered. Making phone calls from the watch, yeah, that's cool. If you've got the watch and you use it, you know, you're running or whatever you do. But I wasn't interested in the watch in the first place. I kind of find it odd that you couldn't make calls from it anyway. No, is it High Sierra, the new desktop operating system that's causing a few issues? I'm sure I've seen a few company emails saying, hold off, we're trying to find a fix. As you often see with the operating system upgrades.
Yeah, well, that does tend to happen, doesn't it? I mean, and you know, as we know, the creative community, or certainly the audio creative community, is not always first on the list. But it's not. So, I get. What was the last time that happened? It was it El Capitan, wasn't it, Dave? That I think the real big kind of like everything's broken. I guess you've probably got access to High Sierra. You probably test it and stuff. I don't know if you're allowed to say anything or whatever, but it's out. Okay.
Is it? Is it out?
I don't know. Let me have a look.
25th. It's been out 2 days.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I was in High Sierra mode for a little while. I think we dodged a bullet again. It's weird because you get kind of, you know, various builds and you test on various builds, and at a certain point, certain things are broken, and then gradually things come together. I think what I do find this idea of one operating system a year incredibly tedious, and I don't think it's any good for users really, because if you want to keep working, you really can do without all of this constant update. I mean, it's getting about as naggy as that paperclip, isn't it? And particularly on the phone. I mean, I'm still on iOS 10 on the phone, And even that, you know, it's like, oh, there's an update. Do you want to update? Do you want to update tomorrow? Should we do it overnight for you? Would you? And if you don't, then just push delay. And it's just like, oh, be the judge.
No, there's no, I don't at all. It's just tomorrow in an hour, tonight.
Yeah.
Never let me decide. There are, I mean, there are certain things I would always recommend everybody hold off on a new OS, particularly on a Mac OS,
any kind of production
until
system,
things have been sorted out. Yeah, if you want to work, you know, if you want to keep working and you do an update, well, for, you know, there is an element of me that thinks, well, you deserve pain. But there are things like old versions of Logic and Final Cut Pro won't work on High Sierra. So again, you're into another update. And if you need to constantly regress to old things, I mean, I end up, and this sounds awful, and I don't like it, but 9 times out of 10, I end up buying another machine. And then you've got your stuff kind of frozen in time on the machine that you have been working on, and then you've got the machine that's the modern machine. And it all just gets a bit much year after year after year. Just fix stuff. Be nice to people and just fix stuff.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that 42 in the chat room said there's a great article on Sweetwater about 10.13, which you can check out. I think I might be able to post that into the links there. So, yeah, I haven't read it up, but as this sort of rather came up suddenly. Sorry, Gaz, did you want to come in?
Yeah, well, only that thing about iOS 11 has seen off any 32-bit apps completely now. So unless the app developers have made it 64-bit compatible, then it's so a lot of music apps have bitten the dust, including Alchemy, which has sort of, you know, since Alchemy was bought by Apple and then sort of shoehorned into GarageBand and whatnot, the actual standalone app, which was really cool, that's one of the casualties now. So there's just one thing to bear in mind. And I did wonder then about that 64-bit thing, High Sierra obviously being 64-bit platform. So like, is there any 32-bit platform still widely in use now? That's my question.
Well, I guess there might be some legacy audio apps, possibly. I don't know. I haven't really thought. I mean, the thing is, you can't do this on iOS. You can back up your machine, but it won't back up the OS. But, you know, obviously on a desktop machine, the same for Windows or whatever. Just either on Windows, I think 7 and up, you can do system restore disk, which will basically just save everything in your system drive to a disk image, and you can bring it back with a restore CD. Same with that's what I do also. You know, we have Imager. I don't use any of the Apple products for that, though. I use Carbon Copy Cloner. Take a sparse image clone of your system drive and stick it on an external drive, and then you can just copy it straight back on and overwrite. So if you do end up in a situation where you just need to regress, you've got actually a full working kind of copy of that. But it's bizarre that Apple's own disk imaging program didn't used to work. You know, you couldn't. You just go, yeah, I need a snapshot of my drive now, and then you try and bring it up and go, no, there's a problem. And it was just like I got burned too many times with that.
I think the point I was trying to make though is has the transition to 64-bit now with iOS 11 being 64-bit only, is that the state of affairs? Have we now finally got, you know, is now 64-bit, you know, practically, you know, is that where we're at now? To see what I mean, it's taken a while for this transition to happen, like 5 or 6 years, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know. It's entirely possible. Good question. I guess time will tell. I mean, you know, the problem is obviously, you know, certain people might still be using apps where the developer's no longer developing. So, you know, you might find that you're using something that you really love and it's never going to be 64-bit because the developer's out of business or moved on or changed direction or whatever. And that's the thing you can't do. And you should be able to do snapshot your device, your handheld device, so that you could just bring it back to a state beforehand, you know, with the host OS at that state as well. That would be very useful. And I guess that'll probably come in time. But as with most handheld devices, they are generally designed to be connected and networked. So therefore, you know, there's an argument that's a reason why not, although I can't think why. There you go. It feels like we're probably a good point to to finish up now. I think we finally got there. It seems like the streaming issues are finally fixed, and I'm sorry that people are having bandwidth stuff. In fact, I think I might revert to an older version of the OS for this machine just to make sure that it goes back to working properly, because I think it is, but I did upgrade a software program. But anyway, Dave, thank you very much for joining me. Dave Spears, GForceSoftware.com. Don't forget to check out the Mtron, not the Mtron, the Chamberlaintron. Chambertron will be something completely different.
It's on a deal until next. Oh, it's on a deal until the 3rd. Anyway, we're doing a 50% deal. And by the way, Nick, thank you for your Dolby book recommendation. I did download the audio. What's it called? Audio book.
Yeah,
that's how top modern I am. And I'm nearly at the end, and it's been it was really fascinating. So thanks for that.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you got that. That was, I think it's called The Speed of Sound. Is that what it's called? At the Speed of Sound, yes. I think, is Thomas Dolby's autobiography, which he reads himself. If you check out Audible, very worth listening. So yeah, if you do tend to read, lots of references for people of a certain age. And at the end, Dave, I think what you've got when you hear the song that he plays at the end, which is a song he's honestly, I was in floods of tears because it had so much more meaning than perhaps it had previously. But thanks for joining us, Dave. It's been a very much pleasure. Ben, also, thank you for joining us too. I hope you go back to your lovely domestic bliss and enjoying the joys of your child while they still can't talk back to you.
Yeah, she's enjoying random modular noise, giving her all the token, audio rate, FM, throw everything at everything just to see what noises she replies with. And she's not offended by any of it. Which I guess is a good thing. Yeah, I think I'll see you guys at Synthfest actually in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, a couple of weeks. We'll be going to Synthfest if anyone's going to be there. I think myself and Gaz will be going. I don't know if Dave will be going, but we'll be around the place. So yeah, do go up to Synthfest in Sheffield on the 6th of October, 7th. I think it is. 7th of October. Do beg your pardon. Synthfest.co.uk. You can find out all the information about that. And of course, Mr. Gaz Williams, thank you very much for joining us too. Thanks for persevering with your audio issues. We seem to have you perfectly now. Thank you.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So, Dave, a book you should read next, if you haven't read it already, is the history of the KLF. I don't know if you've read it. It's the most amazing book, probably the best book about music that I've ever read. And it's sort of, you'd think, why would that be the case with the KLF? It's just the way that it taps into Discordia.
I read
the Illuminati. The John Higgs one.
Drummond's. No, I read Drummond's biography years and years ago, which again was pretty amazing. So I'll earmark this one. Thank you.
John Higgs one. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. So, because of course the KLF, they famously deleted their entire catalogue and then went on to the Isle of Jura in Scotland and burned £1 million. The reason why I mention that is that they did a short tour of playing the film of the burning of £1 million and then vowed that they wouldn't talk about it for 23 years. Well, that all Discordians know what 23, the symbolism of 23 is. But that 23 years was up a couple of weeks ago, and they've launched a new book now. 2023. They did a 3-day event in Liverpool that sounded absolutely incredible. A friend of mine went up to it, and it was a very mysterious event. No one knew exactly what was going to go on, and then they turned up in this ice cream van with all like a Ukrainian ice cream van. It all ties in with, and they've written this new book. But one of the things that was absolutely brilliant, everybody who attended that event, they had to fill in this questionnaire, and one of the things in the questionnaire was you'd have to list a particular like a skill that you've got, and they went through the skills and they assigned jobs for everybody. So people had gone up there expecting to be there for 3 days, but they didn't know what was expected of them. And one of the things that they had to do was people who listed that they were musicians, they formed a band called Badgercull. This is Badgercull with a K. Ooh, I wonder how much of this I should mention. But they had to then play at the end of the 3 days a gig. Badgercull had to do a gig. But some people, their job was to be Badgical fanatics, like uber fanatics of this band, Badgical, including 2 of the guys who were from Bristol, got Badgical tattoos.
Blimey.
You know, so I mean, such is the cult around all this. You know, people were so caught up in it.
I will have to check it out. What's it called? What's it called, Gaz?
The book that they launched is called 2023, but this event in Liverpool, I think, was ostensibly was a book launch, but unlike any other book launch, if you just look up Badgical, and that's Badger Kull, on say Twitter, for instance, you can see a whole load of people went and did Badgical graffiti all over Liverpool.
Wow.
And just total chaos.
Sounds like
which
fun.
all fits into the whole magic and sort of magic and chaos of the K Foundation and KLF.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, everybody. That's it for this week, and we will see you all again next time. I want to say thank you to our sponsors. Don't forget, check out Isotope/RX6 for your audio restoration needs. We'll see you next time. Take care.